All right, today we're jumping into one of the wildest corporate scandals you'll ever hear about, the absolutely spectacular rise and the even more shocking collapse of the German fintech giant Wirecard. This is a story about a whole lot of missing money, a so-called national champion that was really built on lies, and a system that just looked the other way.
1.9 billion euros. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's how much cash was supposed to be sitting on Wirecard's balance sheet back in 2020. But when the auditors finally went to check the accounts, poof, it was gone. It just wasn't there.
And that's the central mystery here, isn't it? How does a company that's on top of the world, a darling of the European tech scene, somehow lose almost 2 billion euros? Or, and this is the really scary question, was that money ever really there in the first place?
To really get how this all fell apart, we first have to go back and understand the dream. Because before Wirecard became a synonym for fraud, it was held up as this incredible success story, a true German innovator.
So what did Wirecard actually do? Well, the easiest way to think about it is they were like the digital plumbing for the internet economy. They handled all those complex behind-the-scenes payments when you buy something online. They were right in the middle of the fintech explosion, and everyone saw them as a true leader.
And wow, you can see just how much the market believed in them right here. I mean, look at this chart. For years, the company's stock price just went in one direction, up. It became one of the most valuable companies in all of Germany. Investors were just pouring cash in, totally convinced they were backing the future of finance.
You know, this was about more than just money. Wirecard was a massive source of national pride. In a tech universe totally dominated by American giants, here was a German company that looked like it had cracked the code. They were a homegrown powerhouse.
But here's the thing. While the public and most of the market were celebrating, a small handful of people were looking closer at the numbers, and to them, something was smelling really, really bad. The alarms were going off, but it felt like almost no one was listening.
So who were these people? Well, the warnings were coming from a few key places. You had these persistent investigative journalists who were digging into the company's books. You had some really sharp financial analysts who kept saying, hey, these numbers just don't add up. And of course, you had short sellers. Those are investors who make money by betting against a company. And they were putting their money where their mouth was, saying Wirecard was a total house of cards.
And we're not talking about vague whispers here. The allegations were super specific, that Wirecard was basically just making up sales and profits, creating fake business operations to fool everyone. And for years, these reports were out there in the open, but the company's star just kept rising. It was wild. Which brings us to the most unsettling question in this whole mess. How could a fraud this big happen in plain sight? Well, the answer is that the very system that's supposed to prevent this kind of thing, it didn't just fail. It completely broke down.
This table pretty much says it all. It's an incredible chain of failure. First, you've got the regulators. Their entire job is to keep the markets honest, but they ignored credible warnings. In fact, they even went after the journalists who were trying to expose the fraud. Then there are the auditors, the supposed referees, who for years just stamped approved on what turned out to be fake accounts. And finally, the investors, who were so caught up in the hype that they just ignored all the flashing red warning lights.
I mean, just look at how absurd this is when you lay it out step by step. 1. Journalists published detailed stories alleging fraud. 2. German regulators, in a twist you couldn't make up, decide to investigate the journalists. 3. The company's auditors keep giving the books a clean bill of health. It was only when an outside firm was finally forced to take a look that the whole thing just imploded.
And that is the absolute heart of the matter. The very gatekeepers who are supposed to be our guardians in the market, the regulators, the auditors, they didn't just fail to lock the gate. They basically held it wide open for the fraudsters. The system didn't just bend, it catastrophically shattered.
So, once the truth was finally out, the collapse was swift and it was brutal. The company filed for insolvency, its CEO was arrested, and the shockwaves were just getting started. The impact was just massive. Billions of dollars in investor savings were wiped out literally overnight. But the damage went so much deeper. As you can see here, trust in Germany's entire financial system was shaken to its core, and it kicked off these urgent, screaming calls for a complete overhaul of how things are supervised.
You can really see the legacy of the scandal here. Before Wirecard, there was this incredible optimism and trust in fintech, and real confidence in German regulation. After Wirecard, all of that has been replaced by deep skepticism and this massive public demand for real, fundamental change. The whole game is different now.
So why should a German fintech scandal matter to you? Well, because it's a huge lesson for all of us. It shows the incredible risks that can be hiding behind the hype of these super fast-growing tech companies. It's a powerful reminder of how vital a free, investigative press really is. And maybe, most importantly, it forces us all to ask some tough questions about the reliability of the very systems that are supposed to protect our money.
And all of this leaves us with one final massive question. Look, the move to digital finance is creating some amazing new opportunities. But what the Wirecard saga proves is that with all that innovation comes enormous risk. So the challenge for all of us going forward is figuring out how to strike that balance, how to encourage progress without accidentally building a playground for fraudsters.